Hey guys, just a little reminder here before we start the video that I originally had shot this footage and then I suffered a broken leg, which obviously took me out for some time, and somehow the original footage I shot was lost. I know I shot it because when I came back home I found the piece of paper I pulled out of the randomizer to indicate what the next title was going to be. So I know I shot it. It was outside the randomizer. It was actually on this tray right over here. So, like I said, I know I shot it, but unfortunately it's been lost, so I'm having to reshoot it, which is why at the end, when I give my summation on this story, we're just going to kind of, end it, and then we're not going to do the search of the cardboard box thing. Fun fact, after I completely reshot all the video segments I had for this thing and began to prepare to re-record the audio segments, I found all my original footage. So, basically completely disregard this disclaimer at the beginning. That being said, it's still going to be a month break in between episodes before we tackle episode 228 after this. Like I said, I just got home recently and I'm still kind of settling in and trying to figure out where things are and preparing to do this on a more regular basis again. So, again, just give me some time. We'll slowly get back into a more normal schedule on these things, okay? Okay, so let's start the episode. Heading into the 1990s, Marvel Comics felt that it was time for a new teenage superhero team to hit the scene. The Teen Team had long been a part of comics history all the way back to the Golden Age. Most prominently, DC had the Teen Titans and the Legion of Superheroes. Marvel had teen teams of their own. Most notably, the X-Men started out as teenagers. Then by the late 70s, writer Chris Claremont pointed out that the Xavier School for the Gifted seemed to only have people in their late 20s and early 30s running around inside, which led to the creation of a new team, the New Mutants. By the beginning of the 90s, however, even the New Mutants had started to progress out of being teenagers and were about to rebrand themselves as X-Force. So with that in mind, Marvel editor Tom DeFalco decided to create a new superhero team that would not emulate the X-Men, but rather the Avengers. This new team would be formed by a new hero, Night Thrasher, an African-American Batman character named Dwayne Taylor, who sought to avenge the death of his wealthy parents. Taylor was raised by his bodyguard Chord and an Asian woman named Tai, who helped train Dwayne to physical perfection. Night Thrasher would be joined by several already established heroes, some of which he's actually covered on the show. The first would be Richard Rider, aka Nova, who at this point had relinquished his role in the Nova Corps after fighting off a massive Skrull invasion of the planet Xandar. Also, at this point I should point out that he goes by the name Kid Nova to avoid confusion with another character named Nova who is a herald of Galactus. After that would be Namorita Prentice, an Atlantean raised on the surface world, who shared similar abilities to her cousin, Namor the Submariner, as well as the ability to secrete a neurotoxin and camouflage herself if need be. Namorita is also a ecologically themed superhero in the sense that she represents a corporation that Namor founded to help bring attention to the damage being wrought to the world's oceans by pollution. Next is Robbie Baldwin, aka Speedball, who was granted the ability to generate kinetic energy fields, which allowed him to bounce around and avoid attacks after being contacted initially. Robbie, along with a nearby cat, acquired his powers after getting caught up in a lab explosion at a company he was interning for. That brings us to the final two members of the group, and the ones that kind of need the most amount of explaining. First up is Vance Astrovik, who usually goes by the name Marvel Boy or Justice, but has kind of a complicated history as he was also once part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. No, not that Guardians of the Galaxy. This Guardians of the Galaxy. The original Guardians of the Galaxy were from the year 3000 and featured a young man by the name of Vance Astro, who was an astronaut who was cryogenically frozen during a long space mission. Not actually being from the year 3000 forced Astro to live inside a special containment suit to keep from rapid aging. At one point, Vance Astro visited his past self, revealing his full name to be Vance Astrovic, in an attempt to rewrite history, which did not actually work, only creating a separate timeline as Vance Astrovic developed telekinetic powers and redubbed himself Marvel Boy in the process. Finally, we have Angelica Jones, a mutant with the ability to manipulate microwave radiation's intensity, thus earning her the name Firestar. Yes, Firestar, as in
Friends, Iceman, and Firestar.
Now yes, Firestar was a character created for the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends show. They had originally intended to use the Human Torch, however, they could not get the rights to him at the time. So instead they created this character, and she proved popular enough that she migrated over to the comics. Unlike her animated counterpart, however, Angelica was never part of the X-Men. Rather, she attended the Massachusetts Academy, which we'll get into a little bit later. The group would be dubbed the New Warriors due to the fact that they were basically fighting a war on crime and taking on more street-level threats rather than the cosmic-level event characters that the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men would face on a regular basis. Now, if the name New Warriors sounds familiar to you, you might be familiar with the team's more recent exploits. For example, a storyline that saw them get their own reality TV show and then in an attempt to boost ratings wound up starting Marvel's Civil War event. Or in the reality where they were going to get their own television show on Hulu or Freeform or whatever, and the pilot eventually got rejected, though it was actually going to be more a melding of the New Warriors in a humor book called The Great Lakes Avengers that would have seen actress Millennia Weintraub playing Squirrel Girl. Or you would know them from an infamous 2020 pitch that would see the group rebooted with new hip Zoomer nicknames, including non-binary twins, I kid you not, Snowflake and Safe Space. However, before achieving the very unique feat of pissing off both the gatekeepers and the social justice warriors, The New Warriors was one of the more fondly remembered books of the early 90s, running about 75 issues over 6 years. And today we're looking at the origins of this fan-favorite team. This is New Warriors Classic, Volume 1. Richard Rider is jumped by Night Thrasher and held over the ledge of the roof of his family's brownstone. After identifying himself as a former Nova, Rider is dropped off, which seemingly reactivates his powers based on a hunch from Night Thrasher. The Vigilante has an offer, but they're going to need more. The next day, Vance Astrovic, aka Marvel Boy, gleefully pilots himself to the Avengers Mansion. After triggering the security systems, Captain America has to break the news that Vance is just a little too young for the team, as he is not Vance Astro of the Guardians of the Galaxy after all. He's still a 19-year-old kid, and he's going to have to try back in a few years. Thankfully, Nova and Night Thrasher are there to pick Vance up. Elsewhere, the Empire State Campus is visited by a large corporation called Gentech in order to investigate an area of the grounds which has mysteriously become irradiated by some type of carcinogen. Gentech is about to demonstrate a new prototype machine that will help restore the ground. However, one of the more noteworthy detractors to all of this is Namarita Prentice. That being said, Night Thrasher feels that this burgeoning superhero team is in need of at least one more member, and begins working with Jordan Tai to track down the whereabouts and information on a Massachusetts Academy student named Angelica Jones. The Massachusetts Academy is basically a rival to the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, in that it's a secret academy for mutants that's a front for another organization. The Xavier School is obviously a front for the X-Men, while the Massachusetts Academy is actually a front for the secret society known as the Hellfire Club, which is why the students who attend there are often referred to as Hellions. Now, Angelica was a student at the Massachusetts Academy until just recently, when a massive attack wiped out most of the student population. Night Thrasher blackmails Angelica into joining this new team by threatening to out her status as a mutant publicly. Meanwhile, Robbie Baldwin is forced onto a subway by his mother in order to go to an art gallery opening. Back at Empire State University, the machine activates and begins churning up the soil until suddenly it gets pulled into the ground, as apparently the soil was in fact the dormant form of Terrax. Terrax was once Teros of the planet Beezer, a dictator who ruled it with an iron fist. This made him an ideal choice for Galactus to select as his new herald, augmenting Terrax's normal ability to manipulate earth and stone to his own body, even creating weapons, most notably a large battle axe. Now, at one point, Terrax went into business for himself and tried to conquer his own galaxy until Galactus happened upon him, and he kind of split. So that pretty much was an end to his heraldry right there. Firestar arrives at Night Thrasher's headquarters, immediately attracting the attentions of both Nova and Marvel Boy. However, there is no time for flirting as news of Tarek's appearance suddenly breaks over the airwaves. The alien Rocklord is already battling Namorita as Speedball soon slips away from his mother to join the action. It appears that Speedball's unique abilities do actually lend a help in the situation as he manages to punch a few holes in Tarek's. This in turn gives Marvel Boy the idea to form Speedball into one giant force bubble and head it all at Tarek's. It doesn't really work as Tarek's is still on the ground, allowing him to reabsorb parts of his body. Night Thrasher orders Namorita and Nova to fly Tarek's up into the stratosphere, which proves to be enough of a strain for the Rocklord to explode and begin falling back down to Earth. Those pieces wind up getting collected by Gentech for research purposes, while the Avengers actually congratulate the new team. To that end, Night Thrasher offers Namorita a spot on the team. For now, though, Speedball is only allowed to tag along at this point as the new warriors are born. Some team origin, huh? 3 of the members are strong-armed into joining, while the other 2 are just kind of standing there. But that is technically the first issue of the New Warriors. However, that was not actually their first appearance. That came in a 2-part Thor storyline that was actually part of a grander narrative called Acts of Vengeance. Now, at the time, the original Thor was actually in space dealing with the Celestials, so he actually passed Mjolnir on to an architect named Eric Masterson, who, when holding it, took the form of Thor. Now, after a while, Thor eventually returned and resumed his identity as the god of thunder, while Masterson received an enchanted mace that allowed him to adapt the identity of Thunderstrike. Hercules and Eric take refuge in the Masterson's apartment after Avengers Mansion and Four Freedoms Plaza were attacked and nearly destroyed. Masterson is worried about who exactly may be behind all of this as an unseen figure who's totally not Loki looks on from a dark dimension and initiates the next part of his plan, freeing the Juggernaut from his prison in the United Kingdom and teleporting him to New York City. Masterson witnesses the Juggernaut's arrival and turns into Thor to take him on. However, even the god of thunder and rock and roll cannot contain the Juggernaut. Internet law requires me to do this. Because he's the Juggernaut, bitch. Juggernaut begins endangering even more lives by throwing occupied motor vehicles at Thor, and it begins to overwhelm him as TV coverage gets witnessed by Nova, who begins contacting the other New Warriors. The team arrives as Thor and Juggernaut both battle onto the train yards, with Juggernaut using Mjolnir's boomerang effect to catch Thor and knock him out. Marvel Boy and Firestar get Thor to safety and try to revive him as the Juggernaut takes on the rest of the New Warriors, throwing them around with relative ease. This begins making Night Thrasher lose his cool to the point that he's now in something of a bloodthirsty rage, and it's only thanks to Firestar's intervention that he doesn't get the snot beaten out of him. Finally, Thor regroups everyone back into a construction yard, where they lead Juggernaut into a cement pit and wind up burying him in the concrete foundation. Spider-Man already did this plot. Anyway, let's look into Night Thrasher's origin. A police sting on a group of Vietnamese thieves is broken up by a masked individual who takes down all the cops with relative ease. This individual is known as Midnight's Fire, and he's the leader of the gang, so they continue their robbery. The next day, the New Warriors training session is interrupted by Ty, who shows Night Thrasher the Daily Bugle headline of the incident. He immediately knows who's behind all of this and flashes back to his early attempts at crime fighting. Back then, he tailed a young Vietnamese woman as she dropped off what appeared to be a backpack full of drugs to a Korean gang. However, it turns out this woman was actually part of a duo who were trying to infiltrate and destroy several of these gangs from within. These two are Midnight's Fire and his sister Silhouette. They're Vietnamese twins who were found in Cambodia who were part of a racial superiority cult called the Dragon's Breath. Now, both Midnight's Fire and Silhouette are also mutants who have the ability to tap into the universal wellspring. Midnight's Fire can move at high speeds and has extrasensory perception, while Silhouette can teleport over short distances and can blend herself into darkness. The trio soon form their own team, with Night Thrasher growing close to Midnight's Fire and even closer to Silhouette. That is, until an encounter with a police officer breaking up one of their phony drug busts led to a shootout that apparently killed Silhouette. Afterwards, Midnight's Fire snapped and attacked Night Thrasher, scarring the right side of his face. Midnight's Fire then swore vengeance on all cops and Night Thrasher, who he promised to kill someday in order to avenge his sister. Now it seems the time has come for the final showdown, and Night Thrasher must take on Midnight's Fire alone. Naturally, though, the others ignore this and follow Night Thrasher along into the Vietnamese territory. It's then that they encounter Midnight's Fire's crew, who have their firearms trained on civilians in order to keep the New Warriors in check. The fight begins, and early on, Midnight's Fire does have the upper hand on Night Thrasher until at one point, Night Thrasher comes back and manages to get Midnight's Fire in position to possibly be garroted, only to suddenly be halted by the appearance of Silhouette. She's not dead, merely just paralyzed from the waist down. Silhouette says that she's joined her brother in being against the police, as their constant racial profiling is what led her to get shot. However, it's then pointed out that they're really just acting like another crime gang, and in fact, Midnight's Fire has actually been benefiting financially from all of this, as he's been extracting protection money from local businesses. Now it seems the owners of those businesses are tired of having to pay extraction money, only for their areas of trade to be turned into war zones. The fact that her brother has actually been running their own mafia gang is enough for Silhouette to turn her back on him as the other people attack Midnight's Fire. Eventually, Night Thrasher gets the upper hand and again prepares to kill Midnight's Fire, only to be talked down by the new warriors once again. However, none of this has gone entirely unnoticed, as it turns out that Gentek has been monitoring the new warriors for quite some time to see if they can be used for corporate purposes. That being said, they're still going to need some more expertise on this and have called in a specific individual, the Mad Thinker. The Mad Thinker's real name is unknown, but he's a genius-level intellect who wishes to kind of take over the world via his own created beings, usually robots and androids. Yes, there is a difference. Now, the Mad Thinker's most famous creation is the awesome android who would eventually leave him to become a paralegal with She-Hulk. Now, at this point, the Mad Thinker has teamed up with a genetically augmented cyborg named Primus, who used to be working with a longtime Captain America foe and his creator, Arnim Zola, the human television set. The Thinker goes to work testing the physical and emotional limits of the new warriors in order to then set up a meeting upon the task's completion. First, he tricks Namorita into jumping into a swimming pool that's full of polluted water. He taunts Robbie by taking Nigel, the cat who was also counted in the same accident, hostage. And he has his shape-shifting android Primus interrupt Taylor's reunion date with Silhouette. The Thinker really doesn't do much with either Firestar or Nova. He just kind of leaves them notes. Marvel Boy, on the other hand, the Thinker hacks into Vance's computer and winds up displaying the youngster's blog to his abusive father. Now that Marvel Boy's identity has been outed to the Elder Asteroid, he lashes out and it leads to a very violent confrontation amongst the entire family. Eventually, Vance is forced to use his telekinesis to literally throw his father out of the room, and he manages to slip away. Everyone arrives at this meeting with the Thinker explaining why it is he did what he did. While the Thinker did take Gentek's money, he has found the new warriors to be of impeccable character and a worthy team. That being said, he did wind up turning over the information he turned up, though not their identities, to Gentek, who are now formulating their own superhero team. An irate Night Thrasher loses his temper once more and actually punches the Thinker's head off, as it turns out to just be another android, trying to explain to the new warriors that they were trying to warn them, and now it's up to them to try to stop Gentek and this new superhero team. Gentek bioengineers a super team called the Psionics, whose members include Asylum, who can utilize a special mask to wield a dark dimension that traps people in their own worst nightmares, Chrome Dome, who can alter the surface of his skin, Mathematic, a psychotic mathlete, Coronary, who has translucent skin and the ability to interrupt people's bioelectrical processes, and Pretty Persuasion, who has the ability to utilize erotic thoughts and turn them into Psyblades. My God, that's now becoming a running theme on this show. Last but not least, there's the super fast Impulse, which is a name I guess Marvel forgot to trademark, as that eventually becomes the name of a DC superhero, the grandson of Barry Allen, Bart Allen. The new warriors, save for Speedball, who's been grounded by his parents, break into Gentek headquarters. Marvel Boy attempts to use his powers to navigate through the building, only to suddenly drop by some type of psychic attack. It's then that Asylum overwhelms Night Thrasher, Impulse attacks Namorita, and someone attacks Firestar to the point of putting her into a catatonic state. The group wind up getting rounded up and thrown into a cage. However, no one took into account the idea that Robbie Baldwin could sneak out of his parents' home while they were arguing. He manages to make it to Gentek headquarters and looks in through a skylight where he sees the man from the Dirtburger incident, Rosen, and CEO of Gentek, Harmon Firmits, discussing their plans. Harmon Firmits was a child prodigy and Jewish immigrant who graduated from college at the age of 15 before volunteering for the Super Soldier program to possibly become the first Captain America. He was disqualified after it turned out he was a hemophiliac. Afterwards, though, he wound up consulting Reed Richards on the construction of the spaceship that eventually flew into the belt of cosmic rays and created the Fantastic Four. So, Yeah, he's 0 for 2.
Firmance wanted power his entire life, but now he's too old, so he's passing on the idea to a new generation by augmenting the biology of several low-level criminals looking for an easy way out. Of course, these are only prototypes and they're kind of unstable, so hopefully after studying the new warriors, the process can be perfected.
I mean, I don't know how exactly that applies to, say, Night Thrasher, who has no innate superpowers, or Nova, who gets his powers from the Nova Core. I guess, there are maybe instructions or something?
It's then that Speedball comes crashing into the room and takes out the generator for the cage in the process. Firmance points out that now the silent alarm has been triggered and the authorities will soon be arriving to see what's been going on as both groups begin fighting again. The inexperience of the psionics comes into play as a member named Chrome Doe turns himself into glass in order to slip free from Namorita's clutches, only to wind up smashing into 100 pieces on the ground. Night Thrasher winds up taking on Impulse again and once more is sent to a near homicidal rage. After beating the speedster into unconsciousness, Night Thrasher turns his attention to Firmance and threatens to beat the hemophiliac to death, which really won't take too much to do. Realizing the mistakes he's made, Firmance agrees to call off any further hero recreation and allows the new warriors to leave the premises undetected. The silent alarm winds up being chalked up to a generator malfunction. Weeks later, Stain Industries prepare to launch a communications satellite, only for it to be attacked and destroyed by someone calling himself the Star Thief. It's the seventh such incident in the last month, and it's piqued Marvel Boy's curiosity to investigate this further. The rest of the new warriors are unsure until Namorita returns from class to point out that the husband of one of her professors works for Stain Industries and is prepared to turn whistleblower.
Stain Industries was founded by Obadiah Stane, who you know better as the Iron Man villain Ironmonger. Stane would also wind up developing his own mechanical army, or sized mechanical power armor-based army, called Mandroids. Now, the whistleblower has pointed out that Stain Industries is using these communication satellites as actually a means to dump toxic waste out into space, or to be precise, just out into the atmosphere, where it could always fall back to Earth and it would be rather disastrous.
The new warriors take out the next Stain Industries launch point in the Philippines, and sure enough, Star Thief pops up as well. The team agrees with him that dumping hazardous chemicals in outer space is probably bad, but points out that destroying this ship on Earth is just going to make things even worse here. That being said, Star Thief is steadfast in his mission to prevent Earth from expanding to the cosmos as the Mandroids begin attacking.
Now, apparently Star Thief is a legacy character of sorts. I couldn't find too much information about that, though. All I can tell you is that this Star Thief is a man named Dmitry Pirvat from India, who was the victim of a malfunctioning satellite that was supposed to be scanning the ozone layer. Instead, it fired a concentrated laser that struck Pirvat's car, killing his family and transforming him into the Star Thief. For some reason, this has made him against humanity expanding out into the cosmos.
In all the commotion, Firestar, Marvel Boy, and Namorita wind up chasing Star Thief onto the rocket, which winds up taking off. Star Thief won't destroy the rocket and the ozone layer. Instead, he'll just pilot it towards the moon and crash it there. Further complicating matters is the fact that Namorita is losing her strength due to the water deprivation in space. However, it's then the giant flash of light appears and the foursome suddenly vanish from the ship. Back on Earth, the rest of the new warriors try to talk one of the Stain executives into bringing the rocket back down, but having no dice. However, it turns out that the Mandroids have had their fill of this, and they're tired of being on the bad side of things, so they wind up taking down the executive, so he at least winds up getting into trouble. Meanwhile, Namorita wakes up in a pool of salt water where she's greeted by Triton, her distant cousin from the Inhumans. It turns out the group was teleported to Adelon by the Royal Dog Lockjaw after the Inhumans spotted the rocket heading towards them. It turns out they're not entirely keen on large chemical weapons hitting their home.
I guess Space 1999 turned out to be a bit more accurate than we previously thought.
That being said, Star Thief isn't entirely up for diverting the rocket either, as he still wants to try to ban humanity from space exploration. He begins fighting with the Inhumans and New Warriors until Uatu the Watcher eventually intercedes and tries to show Star Thief that not everyone in space is entirely hostile, just like not all of humanity is entirely hostile, and peace can be achieved, but it's going to take a lot of work. Star Thief, Firestar, and Black Bolt then team up to destroy the rocket and save Adelon. Afterwards, the Inhumans agree to work with Star Thief to help better understand things, while Firestar, Marvel Boy, and Namorita are teleported back to Earth by Lockjaw.
And that concludes our look at New Warriors Classic Volume 1. How was it? Well, on the plus side, I thought the artwork was pretty nice. It's not overly 90s, there's not all the cross-hatching problems or the gritted teeth all the time. Characters kind of look like actual human beings. So yeah, it's overall pretty good. And for the most part, I like a lot of the character interaction here. There's some good banter, good chemistry, humor is appropriately applied. If I do have any criticisms of it, is that I do think the character development is very lackluster. I mean, we get a lot about Night Thrasher, but, I'm still kind of lost in the woods about Marvel Boy, Nova, Namorita. They all seem kind of just there sometimes. I kind of wish they did a little bit more with them. And to be honest, there's also kind of character overload in this. There's the New Warriors, Thor, Juggernaut, Psionics, especially towards the end. Psionics, Star Thief, Stain, the Inhumans, Gentile. Like, there's so much going on sometimes. It's just kind of like, it leads to a very clunky pacing in the storytelling. And like I said, I wish they'd taken a little more time to develop some of the New Warriors themselves, and show them doing a few smaller things. I think I would have just, made them feel a little more relatable. And that kind of led to a very lackluster feeling in this book. Like, I've heard that New Warriors probably gets better as it goes on, so, I am willing to revisit it in the future, but for now, I don't know if I would really give this a full recommendation. I'm going to have to give New Warriors Classic Volume 1 a C. And with that, let's see what we're doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Hey guys, remember you can help support the channel at patreon.com/sleepytimeforcat productions. There you can request a trade to be put in the randomizer, aka the cardboard box. And as always, remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.